When British railroad workers in 19th century India stumbled upon impossibly high-quality ancient bricks, they had no idea they'd found traces of history's most mysterious civilization. The first modern accounts came from Charles Masson, a deserter from the East India Company's army who travelled through Punjab in 1829. But it wasn't until Sir John Marshall's formal excavations in the 1920s that the true scope emerged, revealing the Indus Valley Civilisation, a society that had built cities with standardized baked bricks, carefully planned streets, and advanced drainage systems while Egypt was still constructing its first pyramids. When archaeologists fully excavated Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, they uncovered something that shouldn't have existed 4,500 years ago. Cities laid out in perfect grid patterns, with sophisticated drainage systems, water supply systems, and elaborate urban planning that divided settlements into rectilinear blocks intersected by roads at right angles. Walking through these ancient streets reveals main thoroughfares running north-south, intersected by smaller east-west roads, creating rectangular city blocks that made navigation simple and space utilization efficient. What makes this discovery remarkable isn't just the organization, but the engineering sophistication hidden beneath those orderly streets. Every house connected to an underground drainage network built with precisely laid bricks, with individual home drains feeding into wider public drains that ran along the main streets. These drainage systems included inspection holes at regular intervals for cleaning and maintenance, covered with removable brick slabs or stone covers, a level of urban planning that most cities wouldn't achieve for thousands of years. The scale of this infrastructure becomes even more striking when examining the details. Mohenjo-Daro alone contained more than 700 wells providing fresh water throughout the city, while multi-story buildings used enclosed terracotta pipes to carry wastewater from upper-floor bathrooms down to the street drainage system. Individual houses featured dedicated washing platforms and private toilets that could be flushed by pouring water through clay brick pipes into shared drains, which then fed into adjacent soak pits that were periodically emptied. The sewerage and drainage systems developed in Indus Valley cities were far more advanced than any found in contemporary urban sites in the Middle East, and even more efficient than those in many areas of Pakistan and India today. While Egypt was building monuments to pharaohs and Mesopotamia was constructing ziggurats for kings, the Harappans were solving the unglamorous but essential challenge of urban sanitation on a scale that wouldn't be matched until the modern era. What's most striking is that these sophisticated systems weren't reserved for elites. Even the smallest homes on city outskirts connected to the drainage network, with all houses having access to water and sanitation facilities, suggesting a society with relatively low wealth concentration. The Harappans had created something unprecedented, cities designed for everyone, not just rulers, with infrastructure that prioritized public health over royal grandeur. This wasn't accidental urban development. The quality of planning suggests efficient municipal governments that placed a high priority on hygiene, implementing what archaeologists now recognize as the world's first urban sanitation systems. Yet, as advanced as these cities were, they held an even deeper mystery that would challenge everything archaeologists thought they knew about ancient power structures. The mystery deepened when archaeologists traced the reach of this sophisticated civilization beyond those perfectly planned cities. In cuneiform tablets from Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley was referred to as Meluha, and Akkadian Empire records mention timber, carnelian, and ivory as being imported from Meluha by Meluhan ships, revealing a commercial network that stretched across thousands of miles of ocean and desert. Sargon of Akkad's inscriptions document that ships from Meluha, Magan, and Dilmun made fast at the docks of Akkad, with Harappan merchants sailing through the Persian Gulf right up to ports in southern Mesopotamia. What makes this remarkable isn't just the distance, it's that these weren't occasional trading expeditions, but regular commercial voyages connecting two of the world's most advanced civilizations. Carnelian beads with etched white designs were manufactured using acid etching techniques developed by the Harappans, with carnelian beads from the Indus found in tombs dating to 2600 to 2450 BCE. Excavations at Mohenjo-Daro uncovered large quantities of unfinished carnelian beads, proving that similar finds from Mesopotamia were manufactured in the Indus Valley and exported by Harappan merchants. Scanning electron microscope studies reveal a drilling technique unique to Harappan craftspeople, distinguishing their work from local Mesopotamian production. The scale of this trade network becomes staggering when mapping the routes these merchants traveled. Lapis lazuli originated in northern Afghanistan and had to be transported across the Iranian plateau to reach Mesopotamia. Shell species characteristic of the Indus coast, particularly Trubinella pyrum and Fasciolaria trapezium, have been found in Mesopotamian archaeological sites dating from around 2500 to 2000 BCE, indicating systematic maritime exchange. Recent excavations revealed several Harappan ports, giving coastal dimension to the civilization and suggesting brisk seaborne trade between the Indus people and Sumerians in the late 3rd and early 2nd millenniums BCE. Multiple Harappan settlements functioned as ports situated at river mouths. Indus pottery and seals have been found along sea routes between the Indus and Mesopotamia, including at Ras al-Jins, at the tip of Arabia, where typical Harappan pottery was discovered alongside a 4-letter Harappan graffiti on a black slip jar sherd. The sophistication of the commercial infrastructure supporting these voyages is striking. Clay seal impressions from Harappa were used to seal merchandise bundles, with cord or sack marks visible on the reverse side. Multiple Indian seals have been found at and other Mesopotamian sites. One Mesopotamian cylinder seal identified its owner as a Sui Li Su, Meluha interpreter, while another text recorded that a Meluhan called Lu Sun Zida paid 10 shekels of silver as compensation, indicating established legal frameworks for international commerce. The Harappans weren't just trading locally available materials, they were operating as intermediaries in a vast commercial web that connected Afghanistan's mineral wealth to Egypt's luxury markets. Mesopotamian records contain 8 direct citations mentioning carnelian from Meluha, with carnelian standing second only to wooden materials in frequency of mention. This wasn't simple bartering, it was sophisticated international trade, requiring standardized weights, quality control, and diplomatic relationships across multiple civilizations. Yet for all this commercial success, the Harappans had created something unprecedented in the ancient world. A trading empire without kings, a civilization that prioritized infrastructure over monuments, and cities designed for citizens rather than rulers. This egalitarian approach to power would prove to be both their greatest achievement and perhaps the key to understanding their most puzzling characteristic. Based on what we've covered about the Harappans giving all houses access to water and drainage facilities, creating a society with relatively low wealth concentration, do you think advanced infrastructure actually requires kings and ruling classes, or can regular people organize sophisticated cities themselves? Comment your answer below. Now let's explore how this egalitarian approach shaped their most mysterious feature. While Egyptian pharaohs were building monuments to their divine authority and Mesopotamian kings were constructing ziggurats to demonstrate their power over gods and men, the Harappans were creating something unprecedented in the ancient world. Cities with no large monumental structures and no conclusive evidence of palaces or temples. After a century of excavations across dozens of Harappan sites, archaeologists have uncovered a civilization that challenges every assumption about how complex societies develop. Although some houses were larger than others, Indus Valley Civilization cities were remarkable for their apparent, if relative, egalitarianism. Walking through the residential quarters of Harappa or Mohenjo-daro reveals houses that varied in size, but not dramatically. The largest weren't palatial mansions towering over humble hovels, but modest variations on the same basic design. All the houses had access to water and drainage facilities, giving the impression of a society with relatively low wealth concentration. This egalitarian distribution extended beyond housing to burial practices, where a limited range of grave goods do not suggest wide differences in social rank. While Egyptian tombs were filled with treasures reflecting the deceased's status in an elaborate hierarchy, and Mesopotamian royal burials contained retainers sacrificed to serve kings in the afterlife, Harappan graves contained modest pottery and personal ornaments with little variation between burials. Some researchers suggest that rulers may have been cremated, or deposited in rivers, but cremation is not archaeologically invisible. The remains of other cultures often include evidence of it. The absence of a ruling class becomes even more striking when examining the archaeological record systematically. After nearly a century of investigation, clear evidence for a ruling class of managerial elites has yet to materialize. The famous priest-king sculpture from Mohenjo-daro, one of the few pieces early archaeologists thought might represent royal authority, is now believed to be evidence of interaction with neighboring societies, not the talisman of a military elite. What makes this absence remarkable isn't just what's missing, but what was achieved without it. Archaeological evidence reveals that Indus cities engaged in a remarkably egalitarian form of governance to coordinate different social groups, mobilize labor, and engage in collective action, producing a wide range of public goods, including water infrastructure, large public buildings, and urban planning. The massive architectural achievements, like the 7-meter-high platform underlying the Mohenjo-daro citadel, imply a very considerable bureaucracy and a management hierarchy. Yet this hierarchy left no archaeological trace of the wealth accumulation and status symbols that marked ruling classes elsewhere. The Indus Valley was egalitarian not because it lacked complexity, but rather because a ruling class is not a prerequisite for social complexity. Urbanization, collective action, and technological innovation are not driven by the agendas of an exclusionary ruling class. the evidence suggests, and can occur in their total absence. This challenges fundamental assumptions about ancient civilizations, that complex societies required kings and priests to organize labor, coordinate resources, and maintain order. The Harappans had somehow created what may have been the world's most egalitarian early complex society, defying long-held presumptions about the relationship between urbanization and inequality in the past. What we have found suggests that egalitarianism may have been a boon to collective action, that distinct social groups may have been more willing to invest in collective action if the benefits were not restricted to a subset of elites. Yet this raises an even deeper mystery about the Harappans. If they could build sophisticated cities, maintain extensive trade networks, and coordinate complex public works without kings or priests, what held their society together? The answer lies in their most enigmatic creation, a writing system that has resisted all attempts at decipherment for over a century, hiding the secrets of how the world's most egalitarian civilization actually governed itself. But the deepest mystery about how this egalitarian civilization governed itself lies locked within over 400 distinct signs represented across thousands of inscribed objects, a writing system that has defeated every attempt at decipherment for more than a century. What makes the Indus script so impenetrable isn't just its age, it's the complete absence of the tools that unlocked other ancient languages. There is no known bilingual inscription to help decipher the script, which shows no significant changes over time. The inscriptions themselves are frustratingly brief, most contain between 1 and 7 signs, with single lines being the most common format. This brevity, combined with the lack of any bilingual text that might provide a translation key, has made systematic decipherment nearly impossible. The script appears on seals that were clearly used for official purposes, pressed into clay to mark ownership of goods or bundles being traded across thousands of miles. Clay tags bearing the script have been found in Mesopotamia, well outside the Indus Valley, testimony to how widely Harappan goods traveled in ancient times. Yet despite this widespread use across a vast territory, the language, or languages that the script represents, remains unknown. Several competing theories attempt to explain the script's origins. Some researchers argue that the Indus script recorded an early form of Dravidian languages, the language family still spoken in southern India today. Others have proposed connections to Indo-Aryan languages. A third hypothesis, advanced by scholars comparing sign inventories, suggests possible links to Proto-Elamite script used in contemporary Elam, an ancient civilization in what is now Iran, with approximately 35 Proto-Elamite signs showing potential correspondence to Indus signs. None of these theories has achieved scholarly consensus, leaving the script's linguistic identity unresolved. Beyond the undecipherable text, the seals are decorated with images that hint at a rich religious life. Completely unlike anything found in contemporary civilizations, unicorns, animals with a single horn, appear frequently alongside trees and composite creatures with single bodies and multiple heads. The most famous is the Pashupati seal from Mohenjo-Daro, showing a seated figure surrounded by buffalo, rhinoceros, elephant, and tiger. Early scholars, including excavator John Marshall, suggested the figure resembled later Hindu depictions of Shiva, the god whose epithet Pashupati means Lord of Beasts. The figure's yogic posture and apparent mastery over wild animals seem to parallel later Hindu iconography. However, this interpretation requires caution. The seal dates to the 3rd millennium BCE, while the Vedas, the earliest Hindu texts, were composed in the 2nd millennium BCE, creating a substantial chronological gap. Scholar Wendy Doniger noted in 2011 that while several generations of scholars had pursued Marshall's suggestion, and while there was a general resemblance between the seal figure and later Shiva images, we cannot know it, and it does not mean that the Indus images are the source of the Hindu images, or that they had the same meaning. The unicorn symbol, despite its frequent appearance on seals, largely vanishes from later Indian iconography, suggesting the Indus religious system may have been fundamentally different from what followed. What emerges is a civilization that created a complex writing system used across a vast territory for official purposes, combined with religious imagery suggesting sophisticated spiritual beliefs, yet both remain completely opaque to us. This isn't just an academic puzzle. It represents a complete communication system that coordinated the world's most egalitarian civilization, and we have no idea how it worked. For all their achievements, cities without kings, trade networks without temples, societies that prioritized infrastructure over monuments, the Harappans could not escape the forces that would ultimately unravel their civilization. Around 1800 BCE, the great Indus Valley Civilization began to decline, and by around 1700 BCE, most of the cities had been abandoned. But this wasn't the sudden collapse of a civilization conquered by enemies or destroyed by natural disaster. It was something far more complex and devastating. The drying of the Saraswati River, which began around 1900 BCE, coincided with the Indus Valley climate growing significantly cooler and drier from about 1800 BCE, linked to a weakening of the monsoon at that time. Recent climate research has revealed the true scope of what the Harappans faced: repeated century-long droughts that reshaped where Indus Valley people lived and strained their water systems. One particularly long drought lasted 113 years, identified between 3,531 and 3,418 years ago, aligning with archaeological evidence of widespread urbanization in the region. This climate shift marked the onset of the Megalayan Age, the present stage of the Holocene, a fundamental shift in the climate system that had sustained their civilization for over a millennium. The IVC residents had not developed irrigation capabilities, relying mainly on seasonal monsoons leading to summer floods. As the monsoon shifted south, the floods grew too erratic for sustainable agricultural activities. The sophistication that had been their greatest strength became their vulnerability. Those perfectly planned cities with their advanced drainage systems were designed for a world of predictable flooding and reliable water sources. When the climate changed, their entire urban infrastructure became obsolete. The advanced drainage systems and baths of the great cities were built over or blocked, writing began to disappear, and the standardized weights and measures used for trade and taxation fell out of use. The residents migrated towards the Ganges basin in the east, where they established smaller villages and isolated farms. But the small surplus produced in these communities did not allow the development of trade networks that had sustained urban life. With reduced production of goods, trade with Egypt and Mesopotamia declined significantly by 1900 BCE, likely due to environmental and economic factors, leading to a gradual economic collapse. The Indus Valley Civilization did not collapse abruptly from a single climate event. Instead, the society experienced a prolonged and uneven decline in which repeated droughts became a significant contributing factor. Archaeological evidence reveals the human dimension of this transformation. Excavations indicate that the decline of Harappa drove people eastward, with the number of sites in today's India increasing from 218 to 853 after 1900 BCE. Yet even as their cities crumbled and as their trade networks collapsed, the Harappans left something profound behind. Scholars now focus on continuity rather than decline causes, recognizing that Indus traditions persisted after cities declined. Elements of their urban planning, their agricultural techniques, and possibly their religious practices would echo through subsequent Indian civilizations for millennia. The Indus Valley Civilization stands as perhaps history's greatest example of what human societies can achieve through cooperation rather than domination, and a sobering reminder that even the most advanced civilizations remain vulnerable to forces beyond their control. Their legacy isn't found in monuments to kings or inscriptions celebrating conquests, but in the enduring human aspiration to build cities that serve everyone, not just the powerful. In an age when climate change once again threatens our most sophisticated urban systems, the Harappans' story carries a message that resonates across 4 millennia. The greatest civilizations are measured not by their monuments, but by how they care for all their people. And sometimes that still isn't enough. Subscribe for more forgotten civilizations that shaped our world. Next episode covers the Corral Soup civilization.